You have always been the one who feels too much, and because of that, the one who waits too much, because those who feel everything intensely end up believing they must also endure everything patiently. You weren't just waiting for him. You were waiting for reciprocity, waiting for change, waiting for the consideration that never came. And this didn't start yesterday, did it? From a very young age, you learned not to inconvenience anyone, to smile while it hurt, to serve when you were lacking, to listen while screaming inside. You became the audience of your own life, and didn't even realize when you started to get used to it. How many times did you let dinner get cold while waiting for him to arrive? How many messages did you write and delete before going to bed because you thought it wasn't the right time to send them? How many times did you carefully get ready, look in the mirror, and then sit on the edge of the bed, waiting for him to notice you? You became an expert at giving subtle hints, at saying, "I'm fine," even with your heart in tatters, at understanding his side, even when he didn't even try to understand yours. But it wasn't love, it was silencing. And the cruelest part, you became a supporting character in a story that was yours, as if your life was happening right before your eyes, and you could only watch. And it hurt to realize. It hurt when you noticed that you were fading away. There, at that window, with your phone in hand, scrolling through the feeds of other lives unfolding, and you there, motionless. Deep down, something within you was screaming, "I deserve more." But fear made you silent. The fear of losing the little you still had, the fear of seeming ungrateful, the fear of being alone. And time passed. The seasons changed. Fashion went out of style, but the pattern stayed the same. You waiting, you hoping, you believing. And him? He was living. Have you ever lived this? Tell me in the comments. How many times did you stay in, just to be available in case he showed up? How many opportunities did you turn down just to keep being accessible? The truth is, you shaped yourself so much that you no longer remembered who you were. But one day, on one of those ordinary days, without warning, without miracles, without anything extraordinary, you looked out the window, and something inside you realized that the world kept going, that cars were passing by, that trees danced with the wind, that the sky changed color. Even without his presence, reality gently knocked, like a soft touch on your soul. You can live without waiting. You didn't need his answer to dress well. You didn't need his presence to put on lipstick. You didn't need his message to feel valuable. There, in that quiet afternoon, you chose to see yourself, not as the one who waits, but as the one who decides. And you decided. You decided to be seen by yourself. You decided that your worth would no longer be validated by anyone. You decided that the window would no longer be your waiting place, but your starting point. You became the landscape itself, no longer just the one watching the world go by, but the one who becomes part of it. Do you feel the strength of that? The strength of no longer being a spectator and taking ownership. You didn't ask for permission. You didn't wait for an apology. You didn't beg for recognition. You simply stood up, and when you stood up, something inside you awakened. The realization of who you've always been, but had forgotten. You, whole, beautiful, independent of others' validation. The world is still adjusting to this new step of yours, to this new vibe you bring, because now you're no longer at the window. Now you are the very scenery, the movement, the center. The woman who waited now has time chasing after her. And the most curious part, those who neglected you before are starting to look for you now. But you've changed. And do you know why? Because you realized. Did you realize that those who take too long to see you don't deserve the privilege of being by your side? Did you realize that your light doesn't depend on applause? Did you realize that being alone is infinitely more dignified than living on the sidelines of your own life? You started to look at yourself in the mirror differently, no longer seeking validation, but seeking presence. You gifted yourself your own company, with your choices, with your voice. And now anyone who wants to be with you will have to keep up with your pace. Do you still feel nostalgic sometimes? Of course. But no longing is greater than the joy of having rediscovered yourself. You freed yourself without making a noise, without shouting, without asking for justice. You simply stopped waiting. And that, my dear, was the most revolutionary act of your life. If this touched you, comment here. I needed to hear that. Share this with someone who is still waiting for someone and needs to remember they can choose themselves. At first, it feels strange, almost uncomfortable. You look in the mirror, and still search for a gaze that isn't your own. You still hear old thoughts trying to pull you back, phrases like, "Did I exaggerate? What if he comes back and thinks I'm cold? Maybe I should give it one more chance." But it's not longing. It's withdrawal from a habit that numbed you. You don't miss him. You miss the routine of fading away. And that's a tough realization. Realizing that for so long, you confused attention with affection, messages with presence, sex with connection, words with actions. He wasn't the scenery. He was just the reflection of an old need. And now that you've become your own scenery, now that you occupy the center of the frame, the colors have begun to change. You started walking differently, eating differently, dressing differently, not to attract attention, but because you realized you always wanted this. You were just asking for permission to be who you've always been. And when the permission came from within, everything around you had to readjust. The invitations changed, conversations have changed, gazes have changed. Some friends have drifted away, others have come closer. And for the first time, this hasn't hurt you. Because you stopped begging for attention, you understood that absence is also an answer. And where there's no room for you to shine, it's because that place has already died on the inside. You learn to breathe without borrowing air. You learn to sleep in peace. And most importantly, you learn to wake up without anxiety. The world you used to see from the window is now under your feet. You became the ground. You became the path. You became the scenery. The woman who was only called when someone needed is now remembered even in silence, because there's a new energy in you, a gaze that pierces through, a strength that disturbs. You know why? Because you realized something that many people never understand. Being desired will never be more valuable than being respected. Being useful will never be more noble than being free. Being loved can never mean forgetting about yourself. You stopped begging for affection and started cultivating presence. You stopped looking for answers in confused gazes and started finding direction in your own steps. Now, when you sit at the table, no one dares to leave you for last, because you positioned yourself as a priority, and that changes everything. Even the words you tolerate, even the silences you respect, even the invitations you decline. You understood that being available does not mean being accessible at any cost, and what once seemed like arrogance is now just self-love. You no longer fight to prove your worth. You don't argue to be understood. You don't bleed to show you feel. You simply live, fully, lightly, without the obligation to explain yourself. And this, my dear, makes you unattainable for those still trapped in scarcity, because now you resonate with abundance. You have time, but not for waste. You have affection, but not for those who only show up when it's convenient. You have presence, but not for those who only know how to be absent. And do you know what's even more beautiful? You didn't become a tough person. You became a whole person. You're still sweet. You're still sensitive. You're still nurturing. But now, all of this is for those who know how to stay. Not for those who show up when they need comfort. Not for those who disappear when you show pain. Not for those who use your love as their comfort zone. You became a landscape, but not in the sense of being nice to look at. You became a landscape in the sense of being impossible to ignore. You fill the space. You change the temperature. You transform the place. Anyone who gets close to you now feels something different. They may not always be able to name it, but they feel it, its presence, its authenticity. It's the kind of security that only arises after mourning the old version of oneself. You cried a lot to get here, didn't you? You cried through silent nights. You cried over seen messages left unanswered. You cried for the lack of reciprocity. But all those tears prepared you. They were salt. They were healing, and now you have a gaze that no one can teach. A gaze that has seen the bottom of the well and decided never to go back there. You are a portrait of silent resilience, the living story of someone who stopped waiting and began to recognize themselves. Have you experienced this rebirth? Tell me in the comments. Share this video with someone who still thinks they need to be chosen to start living. And don't be fooled. You will still be tested. They will try to make you go back. They will come with excuses, promises, memories. But now you know there's no memory that justifies giving up your peace. And the woman you are today could never fit in the window of yesterday. The hardest part was never the decision itself. The hardest part is staying committed. When the world reappears with the same proposals as before, disguised as new promises, it comes back. Or something that represents it comes back. A scent, a name on the screen, a late-night message. You feel your body freeze for a second. Your heart threatens to race, but it's just the echo of who you used to be. It's not you. You realize that now. And here comes the dilemma. How do you uphold your truth when everything around you wants you to revert to who served others better? Because when you change, you disturb. You disturb those who relied on your silence, those who knew exactly where to touch to keep you around, those who used your hope like an invisible leash. You've figured it out, haven't you? That the problem was never about him not loving you. It was the fact that he didn't know how to love anyone but himself. And you waited, because you believed love was enough. But now you understand. Love without responsibility is just pretty selfishness, and you weren't made to fill anyone's void. So he comes back. He or something that represents his energy, and you feel a part of you hesitate, because the emotional addiction still aches, but you're not the same anymore. Now, when the voice of need speaks, your awareness responds. You look at all of that and think, I've been in this place before. I know how it ends. I won't abandon myself for anyone again. That's emotional maturity. It's the point where you see yourself as whole, even when part of you still misses what you had. Yes, you still feel, but you feel with clarity. And that changes everything. Because now you don't romanticize what destroyed you. You don't idealize what silenced you. You don't long for what belittled you. You respect the history, but honor the path you chose to walk. And the most challenging part starts here, staying whole, even when the world offers halves disguised as opportunities. It's in this moment that many return. Return out of need, return out of fear, return out of habit. But you won't return, because you know that every return has a price. And the price for you is too high. Your peace, your dignity, your clear reflection in the mirror. You fought too hard to recognize yourself. You cried too much to get back up. You've come too far to get lost again. And those who encounter you today don't just see a strong woman. You see a woman who has been broken inside, yet still chose not to harden. You healed without an audience. You rebuilt yourself in silence. And now you carry a lightness that only those who have bled can understand. You don't need to prove anything. You don't need to defend yourself. Your walk is your answer. Your absence is your message. Your silence is your protection. And when the past calls you with a sweet voice, Guti, you smile. Not out of arrogance, but out of compassion, because now you see everything clearly and understand that the love you were waiting to receive from others was the love you needed to learn to give to yourself. You no longer seek urgency, you seek depth. You're not impressed by promises. You connect with presence. You notice who only wants to consume and who comes to add. And even though there are still days when your heart feels heavy, you choose not to betray yourself. You understand that nostalgia is not a reason to return to a place where you didn't belong. And if the world can't keep up with your new version, that's their problem. You won't shrink to fit anyone's expectations anymore. You won't mold yourself to be accepted. You won't apologize for being intense, deep, or demanding, because now you simply are, without needing to be understood, without needing to be explained, without needing to be approved. You became landscape, not for those who observe, but for those who transform the environment as they pass through. Your shine now disturbs those who live in the dark. Your clarity now scares those who can only move in confusion. But that's okay. You no longer need to please anyone. You no longer need to prove you're good. You know you are, and whatever comes next must measure up to you. If it doesn't, you simply move on, with calm, with presence, with beauty. If this resonated with you, comment, I don't go back to those who lost me. I'll share it with someone who needs to remember. You don't go back to a place that made you forget yourself. And remember, every time you feel tempted to diminish yourself, take a deep breath. Remember everything you've overcome, and realize you are no longer just in the window. You are the entire scene. Whoever wants to reach you will have to step out of their comfort zone. And you move on, beautiful, free, untouchable to everything that isn't whole. This conversation may be coming to an end, but your new story is just beginning. If this video made you think, the next one will turn you inside out. Click here and continue with me. Let's dive even deeper.